Hello everybody, and thank you for joining me. This is Ciara from Ciara T Designs, and today I have this kind of fun grunge folio to share with you. So let's jump right in. So I'm going to use 2 pieces of cream cardstock to create this base. So I'm going to cut one in half. I'm only going to show you one because I actually had a half piece left, but I'm going to cut one in half. So that's 5.5 by 8.5. If you have a standard US size, Canadian US size paper. And the second one is going to be 6.5 by 8.5, so just 1 inch bigger. And now on the 5.5 by 8.5, we're going to score at the 5-inch mark, giving me kind of this little flap. And I'm going to score on both sides just because I want it to flip easily. So I kind of like to reinforce that on both sides as well, just giving me a really good reinforcement of the flap so it goes back and forth easily. And then on this 6-inch or the 6.5-inch piece, I'm going to score it at 5 as well. But one thing I would change about what I did here is I'm going to score it at the 5-inch mark. But I wish that I had scored it twice, giving me a little bit of a gusset. So my advice to you is if you want to recreate this, score it at that 5-inch and then score it again at like 4 7/8 or something. Give yourself another little score, create a gusset on the flap that goes across the front, just because that will make this easier. I didn't do that, so you don't have to if you don't want to, but it will make it easier, so keep that in mind. So I just kind of cut any of the pieces that I'm going to adhere onto the base to create a flap is going to get just a little notch so that it's easier to adhere behind the other piece. And then on that front flap that's going to be like the front piece, I only rounded the corners because I thought that would look really cool. I didn't actually notch them just because it's kind of fun. If you don't have a corner rounder though, leave it. It doesn't need to be rounded. I just kind of think that's a fun look. And I am going to go around every single piece with my vintage photo Distress Oxide ink just because I'm going for a bit of a grungy look. You don't have to do this, but I think that it kind of leans itself towards the pattern paper that I'm going to use. Now, I have a challenge going on this month in my Facebook group to use pattern paper, and I thought it would be really fun to come up with some kind of different project to use my pattern paper, and this is kind of what I came up with. And I'm actually going to be teaching this as a class locally, so I thought that was kind of fun. So I like to create these videos for you guys, and in case someone signs up for one of my classes and then they can't make it, I'll still make them up a kit of everything, and then they can jump over to my channel, watch me build it, and then still be able to take the class. They just don't get to take it in person, because it has happened that someone signed up, they've paid for the class, they really want to take it, and then they end up sick or they miss it for some whatever reason. Life happens. And so I can kind of point them towards the channel, and then they can watch the video and still follow along and then just ask me if they have questions. So it's kind of a fun way to do it. So this is kind of what I've done here. I'm going to show you inking up the base of this. You won't really see me ink anything else up, but I am going to do it. So just keep that in mind and do it before you adhere anything because it's way easier at this point. So now I'm going to adhere this little flappy notch onto the other side, and this is going to kind of create mostly our base. I'm going to change my mind a little bit later and add another flap on. I didn't know I was going to do that at the time, or I would have done it right now. But this is one of those things I'm kind of going along as, I have no idea what I'm doing. So when we get into covering everything, I'm going to be honest, I didn't measure things. I'm really bad for that. I like to eyeball stuff a lot. And then this is the pattern paper I'm going to go with. Ciao came out with these really cool journaling books. This is the Journey Ahead one. It's a mixed media book, but they have like 5 or 6 of them. And of course I had to get them all because I love them. And they're not very expensive either. I think these books cost like less than $20 Canadian. So I don't even know what they'd be in USD, but or any other currency. I only know Canadian because of course I'm Canadian. But it comes with 31 double-sided pages of pattern paper, and then it comes with all these cool cut-aparts in the front. So it's just a really neat book. So you see me kind of flipping through. It also has perforations on the top, so you can easily remove a page from the book, which I thought was really neat. And I am going to use 4 pages to decorate throughout the folio. And again, like I said, you could literally use any pattern paper you want here. Totally up to you. Now, the way I like to measure, you could, of course, bust out your ruler and actually measure. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that I tend not to do that because I tend to eyeball things. If you're going to measure it, just make everything about 1/8 of an inch smaller than whatever the base piece is, because, of course, it's going to change depending. And I don't adhere anything beside where the flap needs to flip. Because it will lift your paper and you'll fight with it. So it's one of those things where you can, but then you need to score your paper. But I just don't. I just leave the flap exposed and then you get to see that little bit of Oxide ink that we've added. And I think that just adds something a little bit interesting. Now, multiple of my cats are going to walk through me making this. They were very, very helpful to me as I was creating this project. And it took me 2 days to create this project. It generally doesn't, but when we get into the paste, I walked away and let it dry overnight just because it was easier than, sitting there and twiddling my thumbs until I figured that the paste was dry. So no right or wrong here. That's just kind of what I ended up choosing to do. And I'm going to show you in a second how I actually like to measure for this kind of project. The only thing I actually measure is the base. And that's only because I'm giving you the exact measurements for it. But here you can see, I'm just going to leave myself that eighth of an inch. And then I bring in a pen. I mark the cardstock where I want to, or the pattern paper, whatever. And then I'm going to use my slide trimmer because it gives me the ability to do these kind of exact cuts. So I can just, align it like this, cut that little area because it lines up with the cutting mark on the bottom of the panel. And then that's what I do. And then that's how I measure things. I do the same thing in my bullet journal too. If you ever watch any of my bullet journaling videos, I do a lot of kind of pen marking cuts because I think it's kind of fun to do it that way. There's no right or wrong here though, of course. You choose to do how you want to do. So I'm going to just start adhering my stuff. And as you can see, I line it up to where the flip is, but I don't actually allow the pattern paper to go over top of where any of the folds are because I don't want it to fight with the fold because you'll just have it lift off and then you'll be fighting it constantly to get it to stay where you want it to sit. And it's really frustrating. So I don't like that. So I'm just going to kind of, line it up and it gives you that little bit of area. And then here I decided I was always going to add a pocket on top of this left-hand side, but I decided I wanted to flip instead of add a pocket. So this is the leftover piece that was from that 6.5 by 8.5. So it's actually 4.5. And I'm going to score it at the same, I'm going to give it the same as what we did in the first one, about 1/2 inch of a fold. And then I'm going to trim that little area off so that I can easily adhere it. And then I'm going to kind of cut it on an angle. So you're going to see me put it on my glass mat here in a second and kind of mark 2 areas. I'm going to mark about halfway through the panel. And I think I marked it a bit high. I've actually moved the mark from the bottom one. You're going to see it's a little lower here. I have 2 marks. I gave myself another inch. So I think it was 2 inches on the top and 5 inches on the flap on the bottom. Don't quote me on that. Do whatever looks good to you. I just wanted a kind of an angled flip, and you can't use the corner rounder because there isn't really a corner there. So I'm just going to take my scissors and kind of go around the little area that I've just cut, giving it a rounded look. So it kind of matches the front flap that I've added. And yeah, I would have cut this when we were doing the other ones, but I didn't know I wanted it until now. So I'm adding it now. And I wanted to add it under the pattern paper so that would cover the hinge that I've created. And if you don't want to add this piece, you can skip it. But keep in mind that in the class, if I'm giving you 2 pieces of whatever, I don't even know what our size is called. It's not A4. A4 is bigger. Whatever the standard size is in Canada and the States, I don't know what it's called. It's 8.5 by 11. But I just, I'm trying to keep the class using everything that they get. So if they get 2 full sheets of standard size cardstock, now you've used most of them the base, you've added this flap, which is used the other piece, and now we have 1 piece left that's 5.5 by 8.5. And for that, we're going to create it into pockets. So for my pockets, I'm not going to show you any of the cutting, but for my pockets, I took that leftover 5.5 by 8.5. I cut that in half and then I cut it into quarters. I miscalculated one of the cuts. So you're going to see like one piece is slightly bigger than the others. It doesn't matter. I just took the larger piece and made it a belly band instead of a pocket. But that's how I'm going to create the 4 pockets you're going to see here in a second. So for this project, I used 2 pieces of cream cardstock to create the base and the pockets. And then you can decorate with whatever you want, right? So keep that in mind. I try, if I'm going to teach a class, because when people come and take my class, they pay me X dollars, whatever the class is, and then they get all of the materials from me, right? So if I'm giving you, 2 or 3 pieces of cream cardstock, you get 2. I always have some on hand in case someone makes a miscut, but you get 2, and then I want to use all of that 2 pieces, so you don't go home with a bunch of leftover stuff that you don't necessarily know what to do with, and it would be like random cut pieces. So this project uses the full 2 cream cardstocks, and then of course you're going to end up with extra fussy cuts and extra whatever, but that at least uses all of those materials. So I'm not sending people home with like random materials that they're kind of like, what do I do with this like half a piece of cream cardstock, because it's not even enough to do much with, so I kind of try really hard to make the class as full as possible so that people, get a good bang for their buck. I am a big believer in, I know how hard people work for their money, so I try really hard to make sure that, you're getting a good value for your money. That's why my sticker sheets in my Etsy shop, they're all like as full as I can make them with stickers, because I know how hard you work for your money. So I try to give you as much as I can. I try to jam pack as much as I can. So I decided that it would be really fun to bring in some of my Distress Black Opaque texture paste, and I have the Ornate layering stencil from Tim Holtz. I just thought it would be kind of fun. You could use any stencil here, any paste. I went with black because I never use the black, and I thought it would be really fun. And I am trying to use my pastes. I really don't want them to dry out and go in the garbage, which is going to happen if I don't ever use them. So I am trying to bust out my pastes in some mixed media projects more when I remember. So I did think this would be kind of a fun way to use that paste in different areas. But you could of course go in with white. You could go in with like a translucent texture paste that maybe has like some glitter in it, because I am going to add some glitter to this. You guys know I can't leave that alone. We are going to add some spritz in a little bit here in a few different colors, because I thought it would be really fun to just add those in. And I am going to texture both sides. I'm only going to show you this one side because I needed this to dry. So I actually walked away from this. I went and had a cup of tea. I read my book for a bit. I came back. I added texture paste to the opposite side. I washed my stencil and everything while I waited. And then I came back, did the other side, and then I left it for the overnight so that it all could dry and I would be ready. Keep in mind at this point, I don't know where I'm adding things. So I didn't, like when I added the texture paste and whatnot, I wasn't thinking like, oh, I'm going to put a pocket here. Oh, I'm going to put a tuck here. I wasn't thinking that. So because of that, I didn't, like, I'm going to cover up some things. It's fine. If you know where you're going to add things, that would work great. And then you wouldn't have added like the texture paste here in the bottom. Maybe you would have put it a little higher, knowing you intended to put a pocket there. But this came from my head in the thought of creating it as a class. So I didn't know fully what I intended to do, what I was going to fussy cut out, what I was going to use to decorate. Like all I knew is that I intended to make a folio and I intended to use this specific paper. But there was no thought past that. So, wherever I've added texture paste or whatnot, I'm going to cover some of it up. It's fine. Not a big deal. But now you guys know where it is. Like if I was remaking this project and I knew where I intended to put the pockets and whatnot, then you could just shift stuff around a little bit. But because I don't, you kind of just have to work with, what you think you're going to create. And that's kind of what I've done here. So I'm going to bring in, I used a couple of Spritz. I used Rusty Hinge and Uncharted Mariner. I would have loved Salvaged Patina, but it doesn't exist in a Spritz. I'm really hoping Tim Holtz brings out some more of these in Spritz. I love them. So fingers crossed he might bring out more in the future. I hope, because I love them. I own them all. I think they're beautiful. And so after I went around with those 2 colors, I am also going to bring in just a touch of Wilted Violet. I thought a little bit of purple with these colors would look stunning. And then I also busted out my Salvaged Patina Oxide spray. Now, sadly, you guys aren't going going to see it because it happened right beside my glass mat. But I knocked it over with the lid off and I spilled about half of it on my desk. What do you do? I mean, it happens and it's okay. I was pretty bummed because I love my sprays, so I was pretty bummed. But thankfully, I still have, about a half a container, just under a half a container. So I didn't dump it all. I did grab it soon enough to rescue it, but I was a bit bummed by that. But what do you do? It's fine. I'll grab another one down the road sometime. But yeah, so I do silly things like that too. It happens to all of us. It's not a big deal. And then I'm going to add an eyelet on this flap. So I'm going to grab kind of a copper colored eyelet. I thought that or a rusty color. I don't know what you'd call this. It's kind of like a matte rusty color. Really cool. And I'm going to add an eyelet there because this is how I'm going to kind of close this folio once I've kind of added all my bits and bobs. I went through and I fussy cut a bunch of random ephemera from that paper pack that I showed you earlier. I didn't show you the fussy cutting. You guys have seen me fussy cut things before in a bunch of different videos. It's quite simple. If you have any questions about fussy cutting, please leave them for me. I would happily answer. And then I'm going to do a little bit of collage. I'm going to pick a couple of different pieces and create a few little decorations. Like, I'm trying to give the idea for the class and decorate it a bit, but then allow people to take all the fussy cuts that they have on hand, because they're going to get more than what I've fussy cut here for the class, and then kind of go to town and decorate it however they like, So, but I want to show you kind of where I kind of went in the decorating. As you can see, I'm going to try out multiple different pieces. I wanted there to be a few different shapes. So I kind of went with, two rectangle shapes and then kind of a circle. And then I'm going to bring in a little bit of drywall tape. Now, I know some people don't like drywall tape because I get questions generally about, whether or not I don't know. I've never had an issue. I use so little of it and I just cut a little piece, glue it down and call it a day. I've never had an issue, but I've had people mention something about fiberglass and, whatever. I mean, you need to do what makes you comfortable, so I have no issues. I just use a little piece and then I call it a day. But if that's a concern to you, just use a different texture. You could use, burlap. There's so many different things you could use there if that's what you wanted to do. By all means, you do you and you do what you're comfortable with. So I did add just a little piece of drywall tape there. And then I'm going to do a little cluster on the front as well. I thought this was kind of fun. It hides a little bit behind the flap. And I brought in a little bit of cheesecloth as well. This is becoming one of my favorite textures to add, just this little piece of cheesecloth. Because it just, I don't know, it gives you a little something, And I was so happy with my little cluster that I glued it all together before it came apart and I forgot how it went together, because I've done that before. I've done a cluster of fun elements and then I've moved them apart to do whatever, put something else together, and then I'll come back and I'll be like, wait, what was that? And then I'll have to go back and watch my own video to be like, how did I do that? Because now I don't remember. So I glued them really quickly there so that I have a chance to kind of put it together. And then here I just have this piece of cheesecloth that I'm going to add behind them just for an added texture. You don't have any, leave it out. Add a piece of ribbon, add a piece of cloth, add a piece of whatever you want to do. I like mixed media, so I have a lot of fun kind of playing with textures and different things. But by all means, you do whatever makes you happy. Creating is, to have fun and give you, hopefully some inspiration and some, calm if you're having a hard day. I find that creating is really great for the soul. So if you don't like something I've used, skip it or change it into something you have on hand. No right or wrong here. And then I grabbed a few more things that I had fussy cut apart, and I'm just going to put this tiny paper clip on them, which is so funny because it's way smaller than my fingernails. So I always have fun with these, but I'm going to take this tiny paper clip and create this kind of little cluster that's just paper clipped together, and then stick that in this back pocket for entertainment value because I thought it was super cute. And I like these little word pieces, but in the class, and if you bought this book or something similar, you have way more fussy cuts than what I have used. There are so many pieces to play with. This is just the few that I did for this specific class. There's so many more you could add if you wanted to. And then I had this piece of rust ribbon in my collection that I don't know why I bought it. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't do a lot of, grungier mixed media style stuff. I do tend towards a more pretty aesthetic. Not that this isn't pretty. It's pretty cool, but so I don't know why I bought the rust one. It just really caught my eye, and then it was perfect for this, like to seal this little guy. So I don't know, I had a lot of fun making this class. You guys should let me know if you've made it all the way to this part of the video. Would you come and take this class with me? If you lived local to me, would you come and take a fun folio class? I generally do card classes. I'm kind of like the store's main card class, although not recently. Recently the owner's been doing a lot more card classes, but I don't know, I wanted to do something different. So this is kind of where I went. And luckily the ladies are great with me, you know, teaching whatever class I want to teach. So I've been having fun kind of changing it up, but I love how this turned out. It was so much fun to create. And if you made it all the way to the end of the video, please leave me do a travel emoji. So it can be anything, a plane, a train, a car, a person running, however you like to do, because I just think that's kind of fun. And I greatly appreciate you guys who stay all the way to the end. That does tell YouTube, you know, that my video was enjoyable enough that you watched the whole thing. So that's always amazing. And I want to say thank you to my members. You guys are phenomenal. I greatly appreciate you. You make me doing this something I can continue doing, giving free content, you know, because you provide me with some support that way. So I greatly appreciate you. And if you're a subscriber to the channel, thank you to you as well. That does tell YouTube, you know, that you enjoy my content, that you like to come back and watch it. So I greatly appreciate that. So leave me a like, leave me a comment, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. I do new videos every Monday and Thursday, and we're coming up to the 12 weeks of Christmas here pretty soon. And I will have a few Halloween themed videos as well in the next little bit. So I hope you guys will enjoy and come back and watch some more. Thank you so much, and I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.